We've reached the end of 2024, so it's time to give you guys my top 10 favorite movies of the year. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today, I've got my 10 favorite movies of 2024. These are my personal picks for my personal favorite movies of the year. But before I get into this thing, be sure to hit that like button, comment your favorite movies of the year down below, and of course, subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. Without further ado, let's get to the honorable mentions. First up, we've got A Quiet Place Day 1, If, or Imaginary Friend, if you will, We Live in Time, Late Night with the Devil, and A Real Pain. But kickstarting this list at number 10 is It's What's Inside, one of the most surprising movies of the year by far. It was nowhere near my radar coming into 2024. Then it dropped on Netflix, and when I went to the Geek Week event in Atlanta, they actually showed a little teaser for it. I was like, that looks really interesting. Then it drops on Netflix, my friend watches it, he suggests it, I check it out, and it's one of the most original concepts for a movie I haven't seen just this year, but in general. It is a horror thriller, but it involves body swap, and I was genuinely on the edge of my seat for almost the entire runtime. It kept me guessing at each turn. The movie's filled with its fair share of twists and surprise reveals that will have your jaw on the floor, and it's so unique. It feels fresh for the genre. I don't think I've ever seen another movie like this, truly. It's wholly original, really just an insane ride. You gotta check this one out if you haven't, but I don't wanna give away too much even. I don't even wanna say what the movie's about. You just gotta watch it. It involves a group of people getting together and they're playing like party games, but one person brings a new game that can get a little supernatural and creepy. That's all I'm gonna say. And I gotta shout out the editing in this one as well. It was really cleverly done and helped to guide the audience along through some of the complex scenarios that we could find ourselves in. If you know, you know. If not, I really am advising you to go into this film as blind as possible. That's why I'm kind of speaking fairly vaguely on it. But It's What's Inside, well worth the watch, especially during spooky season, but any time of year you could get real hooked into this one. At number 9 on my list, I've got Twisters, starring Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones, and Anthony Ramos. This was one of those summer blockbusters that was the talk of the town for like a month on social media. I actually watched the first Twister in preparation for it, and I think this sequel, or whatever the hell you want to call it, blows that movie out of the water. This was just fun. You know, Glenn Powell's doing his movie star thing, and this is one of those stepping stone movies for him in his career that we'll look back on and be like, yeah, that was one of the formative movies that made him into the big time movie star that he is. It's got big ass twisters, a banging soundtrack, and it's just a fun summertime watch. Like, these are the types of movies you go to the movie theater with friends and see in the middle of summer. It reminds me of a movie I would, want to watch in like middle school or high school with friends during the summer. Borderline the epitome of what a summer movie should be, except at the end, they should have kissed. I mean, what are we doing here? Come on now. At number 8 on my list, I've got Alien Romulus, and to me, this is comfortably the best Alien film since Aliens way back in the 1980s. It was a thrilling watch, the score was riveting, and it created this creepy atmosphere comparable to the first Alien, where the isolation aspect of space and fear of the unknown, right, really plays into the film. The zero gravity scene at the end was wild stuff. I still can't get past some decisions made in the third act that irked me, but as I've sort of sat with this one and thought back on it, I was like, you know what? I was so invested in well over 2/3 of this movie that like 5 to 10 minutes at the end don't do enough damage to really ruin the overall experience. I haven't rewatched it since, but when I rewatch the film and I know what I'm going to get myself into, I feel like I'll be more accepting of the sort of big swing they take in the third act. You know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie. But I mean, as an overall body of work, right, this movie contains some of the best elements of both Alien and Aliens. It dives into some more lore that we explore in like Prometheus and Covenant, and it's simpler than a lot of the other Alien sequels. It executes on the thrills, the scares, the tension, all that is there, and it really fleshes out this group of characters so you feel for them where they're kind of getting picked off one by one. Rain and Andy are the heart and soul of this film, their sibling relationship, and through it has heart, but it's also horrifying at times and kind of embodies the best of the Alien franchise when the movie's at its best. So I gotta tip my hat to it, and I'm really due to rewatch that one soon. I think I'll appreciate it even more having the knowledge of, where they head in that final act. At number 7, I've got A Different Man, and this is one of those movies that will leave you thinking for days after the credits roll. Sebastian Stan should get nominated for an Oscar here. He's phenomenal. Truly. I think he's one of the most underrated, underappreciated talents of our time, and he's on another level in this film. He's essentially playing more than one character throughout the course of the movie, and it's really impressive to see how he's able to flip that switch. Like, he's playing the same person, but as his character transforms physically, the world views him differently, and we see how that affects his mindset, his ego at times, maybe even. I also thought this movie was darkly comedic in the most unexpected ways. Like, there are some lines or quick moments that got a real laugh out of me, and I didn't expect that going in. But the film it's heavy, Doc, to quote Back to the Future. I mean, it really will leave you thinking. It has a lot to say about society's, beauty standards, how we treat people with disabilities. But there's so many more layers here as well if you get into the way society perceives someone based on just appearance alone. I mean, there's a lot to tackle here, and because of that, it's one of those movies that I feel like will only get better over time and the more and more you go back and rewatch it. But my big takeaway here is Sebastian Stan needs to get an Oscar nom. At number 6 on my list, I've got Conclave, a movie that I watched fairly recently, and I did not expect this movie to be as thrilling as it was. The entire plot of this film is about choosing the new pope. But shockingly, I really didn't expect this. There's an intense atmosphere created from the jump, and the score really is kind of responsible for a ton of that. The score here was electric. I mean, every single scene featured a new track that just added to that intensity. Ralph Fiennes is probably going to get nominated for an Oscar here, and he should. Much like A Different Man, there are some comedic lines here that just took me completely by surprise, and I didn't expect to have a laugh watching Conclave. And frankly, when I heard about the concept of this film, I wasn't sold. I really didn't have a desire to watch it. But when I, went and finally hit play, I was like, wow, that completely took me by surprise. There are some movies every year where the marketing, the poster, the concept, they don't sell me. But when I watch them, I'm completely absorbed in the film, and Conclave is one of those examples. I love a good dialogue-driven thriller, and that's exactly what this film is. It's beautifully shot as well. There's one shot in particular near the end of the film. Oh, everyone's in an auditorium. It's picture perfect. And the cast all around rocks. I mean, obviously Ralph Fiennes is going to get that nom, but John Lithgow and Stanley Tucci stand out here as well. Like, this movie's just firing on all cylinders, essentially from the jump. Took me completely by surprise. I can't say that enough. And if you haven't seen it, go in blind, and you'll be surprised at how thrilling a Pope drama can end up being. Bring us into the top 5, I've got Inside Out 2. This is the first real winner from Pixar in a while, in my opinion. Obviously, it's the highest grossing film of this year, so I tip my hat to that financial success the film had. But if you actually take a look at Inside Out 2, it's really emotionally compelling, and why I think this movie works so well is that it grew up with the audience. What I mean by that is, people went and saw this film in 2015, and you were 10, 5, 7, whatever it may be. Well, 10 years later, essentially, right? All those people who saw the first film when they were kids or, going through a certain phase of life in elementary school, middle school, they grew up, and now they have this whole new set of issues that I feel like Inside Out 2 tackles. There are more complex emotions introduced, such as anxiety, embarrassment. This is a really mature sequel from Pixar, and it accurately portrays what it's like to have severe anxiety. Riley has a panic attack at one point in the film, and you're just sitting there in the audience feeling awful for her, but also potentially relating to her depending on where you are. To me, this is one of Pixar's best sequels. The film's just really clever, much like the first. There's a charm here, but above all else, it's heartwarming, it's funny, and it's so relatable. It tackles a universal concept of puberty that every single human experiences, so inherently the film is automatically relatable to the audience. It's a real winner for Pixar. At number 4 on my list, I've got Saturday Night. And this was just a delightful watch. The film has a star-studded cast. I'm not even gonna rattle everyone off. You just gotta go look at the poster or IMDb cast list and you'll be like, damn, who isn't in this movie? It was so much fun to just watch this star-studded cast portray these comedy icons from the 70s. And this was an informative watch for me because I didn't have this expansive knowledge of, Saturday Night Live's origins back in 1975, but seeing that final hour and a half leading up to the first ever SNL broadcast was riveting. It made for another surprisingly thrilling motion picture. Just like Conclave, this movie sucks you in from the jump, and you can't help but be immersed in the story that's being told. A lot of that is due in part to the sharp writing. The dialogue is on point here. There are just a batch of interesting characters that find themselves in new hectic scenarios. And Lorne Michaels is just trying to navigate the chaos of this first night of SNL. The movie opens at 100 miles per hour. It never slows down. It feels like a 35-minute long movie. And it's got just so many funny one-liners and memorable quotes, but also character moments that couldn't help but be charmed by Saturday Night. I am due to rewatch this one eventually. Now, getting into my top 3, these are the 3 clear frontrunners for my favorite movies of the year, and all 3 have actually held the title personally of my favorite movie of 2024. So this was extremely difficult to differentiate between the three and rank them. To me, they're all 5 out of 5 movies. I've seen them all more than once. They're the only 3 movies from 2024 that I've revisited. And so the ranking here kind of meaningless. I mean, I put some weight on it, but I love all these movies, and I will continue to rewatch them all for the rest of time. So coming in at number 3 is a movie that held the number 1 spot for months. Challengers. Adore this movie. Still has, I think, the best ending to any movie this year, and one of the best endings I've seen not only this decade, but in a long damn time in a theater. Like, as the credits roll, I'm having a pure adrenaline rush. The only comparable ending I can think of is Whiplash. Like, the final moments of Challengers, to me, when I watch them, I'm having like an out-of-body experience. The performances across the board are great, from Mike Feist to Josh O'Connor to, of course, Zendaya, but the score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross is really what steals the show here for me. It's probably my favorite score of the year. The relationship drama between 3 characters paired with the tension that just drives this film forward, it really does make for one of the best movies of the year in my opinion. Challengers was my favorite movie of the year for a long chunk of 2024 until 2 others edged it out. But this is a movie that I'll be watching for years to come, and I could just go watch like the final 15 minutes on YouTube anytime and be hyped, just like the ending of Whiplash. Now, my top 2, I kind of put a lot of pressure on because I'm like, years from now when I look back, how will this age for me? Like my 1 and 2, I always feel like I'll put one of them over the other, and the one that I don't put at 1 will be the one that I go to more. Now, just because I rewatch a movie more doesn't mean it's better necessarily, but for me, in terms of personal enjoyment, that is something that really plays a role. And so my number 2 I've seen twice, and that movie is Wicked. When I first saw it, I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I went back and gave it 5 out of 5 stars after rewatch. What really helps this film is that the soundtrack is on Spotify, so I feel this connection to the movie. Even though I have only seen the film twice, I'm actually able to experience like the movie even more because I'll be listening to the soundtrack in my car, like Dancing Through Life or The Wizard and and I can envision the scenes playing out in my car. So in a way, I feel like I've seen this movie way more than twice because I've listened to that soundtrack so many times. But Wicked is a beautiful film. Again, I wasn't a huge fan of the stage play, at least when I saw it years ago. And so to have like the full picture, I feel like this film's really able to sort of immerse the audience a lot more into the story, and I at least was able to understand everything completely, and I was just able to kind of comprehend everything a lot better. It was like putting glasses on for the first time, and I was like, wow, I get it. I had like that moment, you know? Obviously, the music in the film is incredible, but there's a beautiful story here as well. Elphaba and Glinda are 2 characters who, over the course of the film, become friends, and I love that kind of story where these people go from like enemies to friends. Fiyero is a scene stealer here, played by Jonathan Bailey, and I just couldn't help but be so entranced by this world of Oz from the opening shot, and even the score itself adds so much to this movie. I know people argue about the visuals in the movie, but to me, it pops. It's not the most vibrant film ever, but it's not supposed to be. I believed and bought into this world of Oz. It ended on the highest of highs with Defying Gravity. Like, I had full body chills as the credits rolled, and to me, it's an achievement. I can't wait to see what part 2 brings, how it, brings closure to the story. But Wicked is my runner-up, and I really wrestled with putting it at number 1, but taking that top spot for me has to be Deadpool and Wolverine. I've seen the movie 4 times. That was really kind of the biggest factor as to why I put it here. I've seen it more than any other movie on this list, and I just remember when I first saw this one in theaters, I was giddy. From the opening credits, with the bye 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 sequence, to just seeing Wolverine and Deadpool's antics throughout the film, whether it's their first fight or the scene in the van where Logan goes off on Wade. Like, this movie's filled with so many memorable moments. I find myself quoting the movie just randomly, random little one-liners that Deadpool throws around. But I think the movie's action-packed. It features some of the biggest surprise moments in cinema this year with the cameos or supporting characters who were hidden with, Blade and, of course, Gambit. But I was just constantly pleased watching this movie. It gave me everything I wanted and more, but above all else, it's got a lot of heart. It's humorous, obviously. The movie will make you laugh out loud, and like I said, it's action-packed, but it has so much heart, and I think there's a real impactful story here with not only Logan sort of feeling this responsibility for the death of the X-Men in his universe, but more importantly, Wade feeling like he's a hero by the end of the film. I mean, they both have these really emotional journeys that they go on, and they both grow as characters. I think this movie's got a lot of meat on the bone, despite what some will say, and to me, it's a fantastic comic book film. It's my favorite of the year in terms of that genre, but also just overall, it's a movie I see myself revisiting for years to come and just having a blast with it. It delivered. It exceeded my expectations, honestly, and I adore Deadpool and Wolverine. It is my favorite movie of 2024. But those are just my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Let me know yours in the comments down below and hit that like button. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, and of course, stay tuned for more content coming very soon. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.